Join us by the fireside for our evening tales of true life's strange experiences with things that lie beyond the veil of the known and into the misty depths of the mysterious and unknown.
The witch is coming. Just 1 week before we were to hand over our keys to the apartment that we were moving from, my significant other and I decided to invite some family friends over who enjoyed meeting up for the occasional Ouija board session. We talked to a handful of spirits that night, but the one who stood out the most to all of us was this little boy. He spoke of a witch who sewed his mouth shut and had taken out his eyes. He said that she had more children just the same as he was. Some she enjoyed torturing more than the others. He was the one who ended the session out of the blue because the witch was coming, apparently. So, about 2 weeks later, significant other and I are in our new place. Our baby is sleeping happily in her own room. I started to suddenly get this eerie sort of feeling. It was about 1 a.m. And I was asleep. I woke up, I used the bathroom, and then I went back to sleep. And then I woke up again, or at least I thought I did, and I saw a witch. There she was at the end of our bed, and this thing was staring at me. She was every detail the little boy had described to me. And it was to a T. The teeth were as sharp as knives, eyes pitch black with the most horrible, intimidating gaze that I can't even begin to describe. Old floral pattern dress that was torn, in sort of random spots all over her. And these disgusting, overgrown nails that made me want to throw up. So this thing, this witch or whatever she is, was standing there staring at me, and I was so stunned that all I did was just stare back. I didn't know what to do. It was like I was so horrified, and I was kind of in almost like a kind of denial or something. I just couldn't move. Then she turned her head to the direction of the baby's room, and she smiled, this sick, pure evil grin. I'm just too freaked out at this point. I rolled over closer to my significant other and I closed my eyes, just hoping that maybe I was just seeing things. Maybe, I was just being stupid and making this up or something. I just didn't know how to handle it. It's like it wasn't registering properly in my mind or something. Then I peeked over my shoulder about 10 minutes later and she was gone. But the boy was instead standing there. He pointed to my dream catcher above the bed, and he nodded and then disappeared. The witch came back in a matter of seconds and was standing in the corner of our room again. She glared at me and then started to make her way to our daughter's room. I just went full mama bear mode. I suddenly jumped awake, for real this time, ran to my daughter's room, opened the door, and sure enough, there she is, standing in the corner of my daughter's room, this witch thing. I grabbed a Bible that was given to my daughter at the baby shower, and I held it out in front of me like I'm some kind of wizard. I no longer go to church, but my hardcore Christian grandma thought my daughter needed Jesus. So anyway, I very calmly tell this thing to get the hell out and leave my family alone. She just stands there motionless. I can feel this anger in the room that's coming from her. I grabbed my little girl and I went to the living room for the rest of the night. As soon as my significant other woke up, I told him everything that happened, and within a few minutes we were out the door with the dream catcher in hand to dispose of it. The witch thing had apparently made an attachment to our dream catcher, so we quickly and properly got rid of it. She has never been back since, but the boy visits from time to time. Was I possessed? A buddy and I were at my house, in my room, and we were playing PlayStation. The parents had gone to some musical event or something, and we had the house to ourselves for the night. As we were in my room, my door just suddenly, literally slammed shut out of nowhere. I instantly got these horrible chills all over my body, and there was this terrifying fear, like I was suddenly on high alert or something for no reason that I could see with my eyes. And I knew my friend felt it too because we just froze and I could sense just pure fear from both of us. It was like 5 seconds later that we both jumped up. Adrenaline was pumping like crazy. And we started searching the whole house, talking crazy, all pumped up and whatnot, just screaming stuff like, "Show yourself!" Doors and windows were shut and locked, and that was it. I've never had any paranormal stuff happen since then at the house, but I still get these creepy feelings every now and then in that house, but nothing like that time. I have no clue who slammed that door, but it was so intense. I can't even describe to you just how loud and angry that door was slammed. I mean, it's just really freaky. There were no creaks or anything, just this incredibly loud slam that was as loud as a 12 gauge. No joke. So, anyway, the second experience actually makes me shake with fear as I start to type it. And I'm now a grown man. Me and like 10 people, I'd say, were cruising the back roads by my town, really small southern town. And this was during sophomore year in high school. We weren't drinking or smoking or anything. We were just kind of cruising around, going to all the creepy places around the place, and there were tons. So, okay, so after we head out to the cemeteries and we do all that, there's this girl with us, and she says, "My grandparents' house is close by and it's creepy as hell." So, as soon as we pull up, everyone just gets this vibe that's like, we shouldn't be here. And then there's this brave guy who's in the group, and it wasn't me, and he goes straight up to the house and he knocks on the door. Now, the rest of us are in the driveway and we're just watching. And in the second story window, you can see a dim light on, and there's this fog kind of around it. It's sort of very thin. This brave dude goes into the house, and we just decide that, to get out of the car and follow him. We go in there, and, it's a nice house, but it's got this like 60s kind of creepy vibe. So we decided to go upstairs to where we had seen the light on in that room, and instantly, for some reason, all of us just fell really silent, dead silent. Anyway, the whole room is covered with newspaper clippings all over the walls and ceilings, and there's spread shot holes in the wall from a shotgun just all over the place. It turns out there's no light on in the room, and the fog isn't there. I instantly get this feeling of, I gotta get out of here. And I tell everyone I'm going back to the car to get a cigarette. When I get back out there, I can't see them in the room, but that light and that thin fog is there in the window. This is where it gets really creepy. So I go back in, and they're looking at old pictures that are on the walls and whatnot. And as soon as I look at the stairs that led up to that room, this fear just hits me hard. I instantly feel like someone is directly over my shoulder, and it's like following me specifically. So I go back out to the car, and everyone is freaking out because I'm always a super chilled out guy and I never get spooked with stuff like this. As I'm sitting in the car, my legs just start to shake really bad. And I went into something that felt like a trance. I tell the other people that I need to get out of here, and they agree, and we literally just book it out of there right away. As we're going down the road, it felt like I was being pulled back towards the house, kind of like my body was in the car, but myself, my soul, whatever, was being pulled back towards that house. At this point, I'm just shaking so bad, I can barely talk, and my skin was just ice cold. The only thing I could comprehend from this instance was that somehow I was being possessed or something by a spirit, a demon, or whatever, because it felt so horrible and I was so afraid. I don't remember what happened after that. I think we just went to chill out at one of the guys' houses. It was like everything became a blur to me. But I tell you, that feeling I had in the car was so creepy. I can't begin to comprehend it. It was like legitimate, pure fear. And I mean, it felt like I was inside fear itself. So, whatever it was something so bad that was trying to possess me, so evil, whatever, that I just reacted with this fear. I wish I could go back to that house in the daytime, but it was way out in the boonies and I just forgot how to get there. And maybe that's a good thing too. Also, the girl who said it was her grandparents' house, she said the newspaper stuff and the bullet holes were not there earlier either. She hadn't seen that there before. The house wasn't ransacked as well, so it could have been some devil worship place recently, but I don't know, honestly. There's probably a ton of details that I'm leaving out, but that's the gist of what happened. I've wondered if maybe I just overreacted, but I have never been one to be afraid, in all honesty. And compared to other creepy places that we went to that night, and I've been to before, that house was the least creepy. And yet, this was the one that had the most terrifying presence, that really, really I will never forget, and it has traumatized me to this day. The giant cryptid thing. I grew up outside a small town in a rural farming community, and as a kid, around 13, 14, my dad got us a four-wheeler. Um, And it's a miracle we never killed ourselves on it, me in particular, but nonetheless, I used to ride it out around the area for fun, particularly in the summer when school was out. So one day, I was riding in an area several miles from our house, several miles from any houses for that matter, near a large drainage ditch. And it was large and it was about 15, 20 feet deep and probably about 30 feet across, if not more. They had recently cleared trees from along the sides of the ditch, so it was relatively open, if maybe a bit overgrown with weeds. I had stopped the four-wheeler to do something when I caught this movement out of the side of my eye. I turned to look towards the ditch and I saw the largest snake I have ever seen in my life come up out of it. And let me be clear with you, I do not mean a big snake. We had large snakes around the area, and I had seen numerous ones that were 8 or so feet long growing up. This snake was enormous. I could not see where it ended, since its body went down into the ditch some 40 or so feet away. But it was about as big around as a tree trunk or a fully grown adult male, and its head was at least 10 feet out of the ditch. It was looking directly at me with what I can only describe as intensity and intelligence. I stared at it for a few seconds, nearly wetting myself, and then hit the gas, and I flew out of there as fast as I possibly could, barely slowing down for turns until I got back home. I never told anyone about it, as it would just sound insane. An anaconda or something larger in the middle of the USA? And maybe I was young and imagined it while out by myself, or maybe some older kids were playing a prank. but it seemed as real as hell, and I vividly remember it. And it would be a really unusual place to sit in a snake costume and wait on someone, as it was down a turn road off a field. So you'd likely sit there all day and have no one pass by. So that made no sense. And also, there was something about the eyes and that intelligence and intensity that went right through me that was just more than what you would see and expect in an animal, in a snake. And suffice it to say that I avoided that place after that. Something crawled in the car. This happened about 3 years ago, and it was during my senior year of high school. My hometown is kind of boring and it's really rural, so when my friend and I want to find something to do, we usually just go out to the country to do it. One night, about four of my friends and I had been hanging out all day, and we decided to go and visit this tunnel that was supposedly haunted. And it was very close, around 11:30 p.m. So, we were kind of just looking for something spooky. We all met up at a Kroger's, and we took the same Jeep Cherokee to get there. We ended up getting lost on a back road for about 30 minutes, and it landed us in some dark dirt road that gave everybody a sick feeling to their stomach for some reason. After about 30 minutes of just getting out of there, we eventually pulled up to this tunnel. We all got out, and it was pitch black, and there wasn't a single sound. So we walked through the tunnel, and we were looking at all the graffiti, and we were listening to the echoes and things. And we felt pretty safe because we were in a large group. Then nothing happened. It was a fun time, actually. We got back in the car, and we headed back to the Kroger to, drop everybody off. But my car was further in town. So my friend Tom said that he would drive me to my car. So this is where the really scary stuff happened. And by that time, it was around 1 a.m. at this point. Neither of us were really tired, and the roads were completely empty. And we just kept up our conversation, completely taking the tunnel out of our minds for the entire drive back to my car. Once we got further in town, where the roads were lit up, we weren't even 10 blocks from my car when I just got this sudden weird feeling. It's like feeling of danger or something, feeling of fear, dread. Tom and I had paused our conversation at about the same time, and I was looking out the window when I heard tapping and scratching. I figured it was some object moving around in his back seat, but I caught a glimpse of something in his rearview mirror. Even then, I thought it was just a shadow or something. But the noise happened again, the same time that I absolutely 100% saw something crawl in his back seat. It had no fur. It wasn't quite big enough to be human, but it was big. And it just had this dark skin and small limbs. It moved up the seat and then behind it, fast. I immediately looked over to Tom, who had his hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, and he had tears running down his face. His eyes were glued to the rearview mirror, and he said, "Please, please, tell me you saw that. It touched me." At this point, I was not just seeing shit. "Tom, holy crap, please pull over." He looked at me and then said, "Don't turn around." We started passing a Cheddar's with a huge, empty and very brightly lit parking lot where he jerked the car over, crossing 3 lanes, and he slammed his brakes in the middle of the parking lot. We stopped. "Ready? Don't let anything get out." Then we both jumped out of the car and we slammed the doors behind us as quickly as possible, keeping our eyes on the car to make sure nothing ran out, and nothing did. We stood there for a moment discussing what we saw, and it turns out we both saw the same thing. We opened the trunk first, and we dug through everything and there was nothing. We opened the side doors. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing in the car. Nothing ran out. No animal, was in there because there's no way it could have got out. Nothing moved. We just stood there in disbelief. And we ended up walking back to my car where I gave him a ride home. And we just left his car there because we didn't, neither of us wanted anything to do with it. And he certainly did not want to go by himself in that car while it was still dark. I don't know what was in there, but it was like something followed us from that tunnel. Because, it's not possible that it was an animal because there's no way it could have got out. We would have seen it. So whatever it was, I hope it's gone and it never comes back. The antique shop. My parents and I used to go antique shopping during our family vacations. On a trip to Vegas in the late 90s or maybe early 2000s, I don't remember exactly, we went to this antique strip mall that had antique Nippon as well as an antique toy store. My dad and I headed to the toy store called Toys in the Attic, from what I can remember, while my mom headed to an antique store in the corner of the lot. Not long after my dad bought me a G1 Devastator, my mom called and told us to come over. She stated to my dad that the owner had some more Nippon antiques in the back of his store. But my mom was kind of wary of going back there alone, so we left the antique toy store and we headed over to meet my mom. We got in the store and I remember it being a nice, chill kind of temperature. The windows were tinted, it wasn't lit up very brightly, but there were enough items to fill the walls of the store. This isn't my nature, but I didn't even walk around because the owner, Tony, seemed pretty interesting. Also, he didn't seem the type of owner to carry transformers, the robots or the ones for the train sets. He talked to us about the future of Vegas and how it was changing for the worse. After talking for a little bit, he asked me if I would like to try on a samurai helmet. At first, I didn't want to try on a dusty helmet, but the look on my mom's face translated to, "This is probably going to be your one and only chance to wear this. Don't be a fool." My mom took a picture of me and asked Tony if she could take a picture of him. He said no, but my mom took a picture of him anyway. He apparently was a little bit ticked off, but they continued talking. Tony also mentioned how he survived a fire. I'm unsure of the time frame, ATM. Additionally, my mom saw people peeking in the store, but no one ever actually came in while we were there. We never got to see the back room. My parents purchased a gold Buddha from Tony, which he gave to them for a pretty good price. I believe it was like $125. So we all left pretty happy. So a year later, we returned to the same antique strip mall in Vegas. We got to the corner where Tony's store had been, and it was now a bookstore. My parents talked to the owners while I walked around. Apparently, the antique bookstore had been there for 5 to 7 years. My parents told them we were just here a year ago and Tony's shop was at that location. They didn't believe my parents, and they told them that Tony had passed away in a fire from smoke inhalation in the back room. His more valuable antiques were back there too. They also mentioned that he never gave out deals to anyone. As I'm walking around and overhearing some of this conversation, I find a display case full of one of my favorite books, Mysteries of the Unexplained by Reader's Digest. Additionally, the photo of me wearing the samurai helmet developed while the photo of Tony was white. After this occurred, my dad was no longer a skeptic.